Hey all, welcome back. I went ahead and finished the rest of setup of this Battle of the South China Sea scenario, and I want to show a couple of little new features that I put out today, and also just try to get the scenario going. All right, so just for future reference, what I think the best way of kind of bundling your scenarios is, of course, you're going to need your scenario file. But then I went ahead and the game will ignore this file, but it's something you could put in so that people who download your scenarios can just take a look at your rules. So I basically just put in all the information of what the victory points and your level and all that jazz, right? So just an idea what you can do there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get back into the game. All right, so I added a couple of features while since yesterday. First thing is, and we're going to show it here, is I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of the ships to this TF. I basically have added everything in for the scenario, so all of the objectives. If you don't know this scenario, essentially you got a bunch of Soviet groups. This one's a carrier group. It's basically just there to protecting its other two groups. I'm going to zoom in too, just so you can see everything real easy. These TFs, they're a bunch of slow convoys, and their goal is to get to Cam Ranh. And then there's a couple of these are all the default starting positions. So once we get to the default phase, you can move these things around, and the other side won't be able to see that. You have a bunch of objectives which are set for convoys. So for convoys, there's 4 objectives. One in this hex. If you looked at it, you could see it. There's the objective. Okay. Then you also have 3 others on the islands or on the main island of the Philippines. These are all for the convoys. This is for the marine positioning, and you could set the objective to be of any type. You could also set these objectives so that they're visible to everybody. So you may want your objectives to be something that only that user can see, but for some of these simpler scenarios, since all the sides know what all the different scenario objectives are, I went ahead and made each of these objectives visible to everybody. So that means once we start getting into the part where it's flip-flopping between views, both sides will be able to see these objectives. Okay. Then there's also 3 tankers. So for the Americans, there's a fast convoy that's got to get to the Philippines. There is marine positioning ships that have to get to Bataan, and then there's 3 tankers. Okay, and these are generic records that I added into the scenario. And the way you would add them, the way you add like general convoys and stuff, is you go to surface, you'd pick the allied powers. There's 3. There's a NPW for neutral powers. There's a SPW for Soviet powers, and it's basically the 3 types of things that you could just replicate over and over again. I added them here. So FCs, fast convoys, slow convoys, and tankers. Okay, so I added in 3 tankers, and I put them in the starting positions that the scenario asked me for. And these 3 guys, their goal is to go some path between these 2 objectives. Okay, so now I'm mentioning a lot of things about objectives and things. These objectives are not. There isn't code that's enforcing any of these objectives. Okay, so it's really up to you to set up objectives that the players can basically follow. Okay, like I said, maybe eventually I can put some type of like basic logic that you can create for these objectives that like will detect things passing through them or things getting in them, and then maybe when the ship gets into the objective, you can then take it off the board. But the juice isn't worth the squeeze on that one. So essentially, as you're moving your ships around and stuff, you're just paying attention to these rules. And once those Japanese ships get past this level, you shouldn't attack them anymore. Okay, so I guess a little bit of the honor system, but I don't think that's too much to ask. So what's left? So got all the objectives, got all the ships added. I left a little bit to show you the new feature that I added. So normally, when you're adding a new type of ship, so I've added in 2 ships currently, which is the 2 Charles F. Adams class destroyers, the Stoddard and the Conqueror. And if you remember on the last video, when you're adding in a particular ship, it just adds a random version of that ship. Well, I decided, let me give you guys the ability to actually pick the actual hull number that you want in this. So if you're going to be very historical, or if you want to pick specific ones that you know are in that area, you can do that now. So how do we do that? So let's go ahead. What I'm going to do is, so I need to add the midway to this hex. So I'm going to go Surface, USA, CV, midway, and now it shows that you could either pick a random one or you could pick one of the hulls. So I'm going to pick midway now. I think there's also, let's see, the Oldendorf, the Sterret, and the Reeves are in there. So let's go ahead and do that. There's a CG. I think that one of them is a Belknap, which is the Sterret. Okay, bang. Then I'm going to add in I think it's a Leahy, and add in the Reeves. Lovely. And then I'm going to add in a Spruance, which I believe is a Spruance VLS. Oldendorf. Bang. Okay, so now I got pretty much all the ships added to the game. So at this point, really, this scenario is ready to be saved as a template. Okay, you're still in the setup forces phase, right? So it gives everybody the ability to, if they wanted to add things back, more things into the scenario, they could. So, but we're not going to go ahead and save it right now. We're just going to go ahead and just keep going. And I'll in the background I'll set up another version of this by adding these guys back into the base, and then I'll put it out onto the website for you guys to download. So let's just go ahead and move on to the next phase, which is going to be, this should take us to the deployment phase. Okay, so now it's in the deployment phase. So the way the game kind of works is, well, here's the update. So at this point, from this point onward, essentially there really is no more admin screens. Every screen that you look at is going to be shown from the perspective of a particular side. Okay? So side mode has begun. There's a bunch of information on what you can do, and I'll show you kind of the features here. We're going to basically add a bunch of TFs, and we're going to kind of move things around. Okay? So now, if you were to save the game here and give this as the starting point for scenarios, then now people are locked in. They can't add new ships, but they can move these ships around based on the rules, right? So, for instance, the rules show that I believe this, let's see if I even have it up. I think I do. All right, so the Soviet CV can be moved anywhere within 2 hexes of the default location. Okay, so essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this as a TF, and then I'm just going to randomly put them somewhere. But they can be anywhere within 2 hexes of this thing. The game is not enforcing that, right? So that's, again, it's up to you to do that. The game will enforce all the actual game rules, but it won't enforce scenario rules. All right, so let's go ahead and create a TF. I'm going to center it on the, let's see. Okay, so we got a task group. So now the Kirov, or one of them, the Kalinin, I believe it's the Riga in the actual game, but I use the actual real names of the ships, which I believe changed like multiple times. I don't know whether that one was the Kalinin or maybe it was the Andropov, I'm not sure. But so I just picked one that wasn't the Kirov or the whatever the other one was called. So anyway, so how do I add stuff in there? So now I got a TF of 1 spot. Now, normally the game doesn't allow you to create a TF of 1, but during these phases, certain phases, the ones where you set up TFs or get rid of them, I allow the TFs to hold less than 2 ships until you hit save. And if you hit save and it only has 1 in it, it'll take it out of the TF and it'll make it back into its own ship. So essentially just follow the rules that have to do with setting up task forces. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add. Notice I had to right click on that one, because if I double click on it, it actually shows the it actually shows it. So here, this is the first use of these like sliding trays. Okay, so you'll just have to get kind of used to it. So I'm basically going to add all the ships into this task group, and it'll slowly turn from a task group to a task force. I think at 4 it'll probably be a task force. And then what you could do is you can actually move them around. So the Kiev, I want the Kiev to be the first slot, so I'm gonna, or the back, whatever, the Novorossiysk. So I move it over here. So you have the ability to kind of move ships around within this. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make it the Kiev class, and then the Kirov, and then the other cruiser, which I believe is the Cresta 1, yeah, the Drozd, as well as a Udaloy class. One of the one that's actually picked in the scenario is a name that doesn't actually exist for one of the Udaloys. So I added in all the Udaloys that existed at the time, and so I just picked one of them. So anyway, so the task force is actually at this place, so I can actually move that guy around. So let's just say I'm going to move it here just so it's more in line, it's closer to all of its buddies that it's protecting. Okay. So let's do the same thing over here. Let's right click. Let's create let's see, we got yeah, all right. And let's just add all the things into this guy. I'll move them out of the way just so I can get that done there. Let's see, so CG, DD, let's do it I don't know, let's kind of split it up, but I don't think it really matters for now. I'll get in the chance to reorganize my ships if they get into combat, so it's not exactly super important that you line them up right now, but I'm going to kind of try to, do it at least how I think it would be. So you guys might have a better idea how you want to do this, but so let's see here. Okay, so what do I want to do? Okay, so he can't move. His position is you can move him, but the rules of the game of this particular scenario says he should stay still. So I'm going to do the same thing with this. I'm going to create these guys into TFs. Okay. All right, move it in there. Let's move him out of the way. So this little black area around here is basically what's always showing the selected thing. So and the way you move these trays around is you got to pick an area that's not covered by a marker or this border. Okay, so I can grab it right here and I can move it all around however I want. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and add in another DD. I'll start adding in those. What's what we got, a flotilla, and then here. Okay. Okay. Notice every time I close this task force, it goes to the default first ship that you can move with. So that's why this guy keeps popping up. I might make an enhancement that says when I double click this and close it, if I double click and close it, it makes this the selected thing. So I'll probably put a little enhancement in either later today or tomorrow, so that when you're double clicking this and closing it, it just this guy then becomes the selected one. Okay. So just for convenience. All right. So let's see what else. That's okay. So all these subs, they can be moved wherever you want. The rules for these guys are that they have to both be in the Formosa zone and can't be next to anything. So I'm just going to kind of move them over here because I assume that the Americans are going to be coming over from somewhere over here, right, to get to Bataan. This guy can move anywhere 1 hex away from where he's at, so I'll kind of move him over here. This guy can be in any hex in the South China Sea, just as long as he's not next to anything. So I'm going to go ahead and move it somewhere. I don't know. He'll probably try to provide some screening for these ships as they're trying to get to Camaran. Let's see what else. This guy, I think he can move anywhere within 2 hexes of here, so I'll just move him here. I don't really know. And then these guys can't be grouped together, but they have to be within 4 hexes of this area. So I'm just going to kind of spread them out. And so this is the initial positioning of all these guys. All right, so I think I'm pretty much done with everything I want to do for the Soviet side. All right, cool. So I'm gonna hit next. All right, so now I'm in the American side. Oh, I just noticed something. It didn't prompt that I was changing sides. So that is a setting that I must not have set on this thing. Okay, so let me turn off all the things that I turned off yesterday. This is a new version, so it didn't carry over those settings that I did. So, okay, land combat's off. We keep that stuff on. Auto show help, yes, and yeah, switch. Okay, so now it's going to prompt something every time I change sides, just to kind of simulate how it would be if you and a friend were sitting here and playing at the same time. So let's see. Yeah, so I'm going to create some task forces here as well. Okay, I'm going to put the Tripoli as the flagship. Okay, and then I'm going to start adding in. Okay, let me move this out of the way here. All right, it doesn't really matter, so I'm just going to add everything in here as I can. I'm just going to kind of intersperse the AA ships with the warships. Oh, I forgot. Let me bring in the Australians. Yeah, I think that's fine. Okay, so now we have a nice there. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'll create a TF. All right. I'm going to add in the carrier should be in here. All right. He's definitely going to be the command ship when I get a chance to move things around. Okay, boom. Let's add the next cruiser, add destroyers, and finally the Spruance. All right. So, yeah, that's definitely annoying. I'm going to get that fixed. It should not pop up to that guy. When I close that thing, it should go to this. So I'll check on that and figure out how I can get that to work, because that's annoying me to all get out. This is how I build most of my games, right? I start playing it and figure out what I don't like and get rid of it. Okay, so I think, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and just create the rest of these guys. All right, create TF. All right, add these two guys in here. Move one of them up front. Okay, great. Yeah, I'll start doing that. I'll start clicking on that and closing it, and that'll at least prevent the annoying parts. Let's see, create this. Okay, I know this is compelling. This is compelling television here for you guys. Is that it? I think that's everybody. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I think so. Okay, so essentially when we get started, right, you got what's going to happen is, these guys got to get up here, right? This is the MP. He's got to get over here. The AA ships also have to get there. And then the fast convoy's got to get to the Philippines. And then, this guy can move anywhere, I think. Let me see, what's his, the Batfish can be anywhere within 3 hexes of the default location. Oh, look at that, I misspelled hex. There you go. Okay. All right, so, I don't know where. It doesn't really matter. Okay, I think we're ready to go. All right, so now we're basically ready to finish the deployment phase. I've got all my ships set up, and, this guy can be, I think, 1 hex between where he's at now and Bombay Reef. This guy can be 2 hexes away from here. So we'll do that. All right. Oh, and he could be 5 hexes from here. So I'm going to make him a little closer to Philippines so he can run some cap over the AA ships. All right, let's go. All right, turn 1. We started. Now we're in the game. First turn, AM. Okay. All right, game is entering Soviet perspective. If necessary, please switch players for continuing. Okay, great. All right, declare war phase. Um, all right, so this phase is if you're running the land war. You I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and like not have this phase come up if you're not doing the land war. There's really no reason for the Soviets to declare war on anybody. So I'll make a little enhancement on that one too, so that this phase just passes right through if you're not if you didn't enable the land war module, which I thought I didn't, but let me check. Yeah, land combat's off. So it shouldn't have popped up, but I'll check on that. So what this basically means, though, is if you were doing the land war, right, you could actually declare war on neutral countries, okay? And the only person that can do that is the Soviets, and the only time you can do that, I believe, is in the strategic phase, so that's in the AM turns, okay? So, but there's nothing we want to do in this case. Everybody who the Russians want to beat up on are already aligned, so we don't need to mess around with it. So I'm going to move around. I'm going to move on. All right, land war. Okay. So, yeah, I don't know what's going on with this guy. I'll have to check on that. So, I'm just going to go ahead and ignore this piece, right? Because, again, we're not doing any of this. I want to explain in detail how this land part works, and I don't want to use this as an opportunity to kind of describe it. But essentially, every single, like for instance, if I want to start a land transfer, I can start moving troops around. So what's in here? This says USSR North. So it's basically like the northern command of the Russians. I put 2,000 in there, which is like 2 million. I established like initial estimates for all these things based on world military power, 1989, 90 kind of thing. And so every number represents like 100 troops. So 2,000, I think that's like 200. I can't count. Anyway, something like that. So, yes, I think that's 200,000. Yeah, that's who it would be. Okay. So, and I think there's a lot in other places. Like here we go. This is 400,000 here. A lot got moved to the 220,000 troops here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So you guys can modify those numbers during setup. You can increase those, decrease those. You can increase the number of supplies, et cetera, right? You can do whatever you want. So, so I'm not going to actually do any transfers, but if you decided to do some transfers, like let's say I wanted to transfer from Western TVD to Eastern Europe. So we'll start from here, which is USSR Western TV, and I'll start a land transfer to it's all the things you can touch. You can either move them to Poland, Czechoslovakia, or I can move them to the Southwest Theater, or I can move them to the Northwest Theater. Now what's going to happen is, let's say I say to Czechoslovakia, so a configurable amount is being sent every turn. Okay, so 3 times a day. That amount is in the save file, and you can edit it in the save file. I told you yesterday I'm trying to prevent you being able to go into the save file, but for Booleans like trues and false, yeah, we can do that using this. But for numbers and stuff, you can just go into the thing and change my defaults. Okay, so what this would do is essentially it's just going to move a portion of troops like a faucet. Okay, so each turn it'll just move troops from here to here. So at the same time, I could declare attacks. Like from here, I could declare a land combat against Bavaria, okay? And what that would send a certain amount of troops over each time, and they would do battle, okay? So I want to kind of get more into the details of the actual combat. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn off all these things because they really have nothing to do with us playing around in the Pacific. Okay, so I'm going to stop the land transfer. So now we have no land transfers at all. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit next. All right, so now we're going into, now the U.S. gets the chance to do land orders. Okay, all right, so let me go ahead and, cool. All right, And I just remembered, I just figured out why it wasn't taken in what my what I was choosing to do. So I know what I need to fix for that piece. So weather, let's go. Hopefully there's no bad weather in the Pacific, which there's not. Well, not in the places we care about. All right, so weather phase, it does some automatic rolling, and it determines the ones affected by bad weather. Okay. All right, here we go. Game is entering Silvery's perspective. Declare transfers. All right, so now strategic air movement. This is something you may want to use, something you may not want to use. You can just click past it if you don't care. But essentially, every ship, every plane, if, like for instance, since it's not storm, these guys can transfer. Okay. Now, where can they transfer to? Certain countries can transfer, certain countries can't. It's all in the save file where I've set up like which countries can transfer into what theaters. Okay. So countries like Vietnam don't have any choice. Even if this plane had a range of 1,000, it's no place it can go because Vietnam is not set as a strategic country. Okay, so there's very little strategic countries. You know, it's just your major ones like the U.S., Soviets, French, the British, and for some theaters, if their forces start off map, then you can get them in. Like so, for instance, in the Indian thing, you know, any Malaysian ships which would start here in Malaysia do have the ability to move from a strategic area like the logistical area to a map. Okay, so that's how it's kind of managed. Okay, so if you wanted to have a wide span battle, you could use this feature to move things around. So this will show everything that's within range of this guy. Okay. Good Lord, this guy, I think it uses, let me look at the rules here. I believe it uses 3 times their movement allowance, and then I calculate that in like straight line hexes, okay? So it's, you know, it's not exact, it's just an estimation of something being within a round within range of this ship plane being able to transfer there, okay? So pretty long ones like this can, like if I had the one, there's one of those Russian bombers has a range of like 150 or something. It could literally reach everywhere in the map. Okay, so but there's a cost to it. Okay, you can't you can't use this kind of logic to transfer from a actual on map location to another on map location. You have to actually you can't transfer to any other ones here in the same map because you could just use activation for that. But to get to another map, you have to at least stop at one place that's like a logistical area in between. And each hop you make is going to cost you 3 turns. Okay, so it's a configurable amount that's in the save file as well. Okay, so I know all the different fleet series have a wide range of how many turns a plane is out of sorts. When it makes a transfer. So I just picked 3 a day. I figured that's logical for me. You can adjust it however you want. So be it. But I'm not going to do any transfers, so I'm going to skip past this whole thing. Now that these guys can do the same, I'm just going to skip it. All right, so now we're in deep mode. I don't want to set anybody to deep mode, but if you want to see deep mode, you can set it to that. Okay? And if it goes to deep mode, you can tell that there's a little indicator over it to say that's in deep mode. So I'm not going to do any deep mode, so I'm going to skip past that. Same thing with I guess for the Russians, I probably could do it, but I'm not going to do it. But you know you can. All right, strategic air. Okay, so here's the interesting thing. The physical game, the only way a good plane like this can actually fight stuff is by utilizing strategic air. Flop it into the recon and you can detect something, okay? Well, because I enabled this setting, which is air surface detections in combat, honestly, being that we have now the power of the computer and the power to keep track of all these things, the strategic phase is something that honestly I could code around it. I could just make everything happen using moving the ship around, moving your planes around during the activation phase. Like for instance, mining, right? Well, why couldn't I just fly the guy who's going to drop mines over to the spot you want to drop mines and then say drop mines? So I haven't implemented that, and I don't plan on it yet. You could even do TAC chord through that as well. But recon really is something that honestly I've kind of coded out. I mean, it will work. It'll work like the code, like the game asks you to, right? But honestly, you get a better use of the plane if you use it on recon during the activation phase. Now, to make it use to actually have a pretty good range in which to sight other things, you probably have to have the ship or the plane in recon mode when it's flying around, which has it cost an amount each time. So what I have it currently set in the game file, and you can update this if you like, is that if you go in recon mode, this plane will be able to see farther, or certain planes will be able to see farther if they run in recon mode. And when, let's look if we can, let's see, we have a recon plane right here. I believe this recon plane has a pretty good, yeah, so since I don't have, let me see here. So this particular plane, I'll have to check it out, but this particular plane should be showing its like, I think it's in the orders phase where it shows what the actual range of this thing is. But it can travel 60 and just search around, right? But if you wanted it in recon mode, you'd pick where you enter recon mode, and then essentially at that point it would cost 5 points to move each place. So you can get to a place that you want to loiter, and then you can turn on recon mode and start using up your movement allowance pretty quickly. So that's kind of the balancing of such a powerful feature, right? If you don't have it in recon mode, then essentially it pretty much has to fly right over a ship, a surface ship, to see it. But it will see it if it flies over it, okay? So that's something you can do to kind of simulate, and honestly, I just think it's a better mechanism. It takes the abstraction out of the strategic air phase, but I'll leave it up to you. You can use it or not use it. Okay, so essentially I'm not going to do any recon or anything in strategic air. I'm going to kind of skip right past it, okay? I want to kind of get into the actual guts of the thing. All right, so planes that can do a strategic air on the American side, there's plenty of them. And here you see the behavior of the tool. So what it does is it figures automatically. It says, hey, it picks the very first plane it can pick, and then it makes sure that you can see that plane. So that means what you're going to end up seeing is, as you're playing the game, you're going to see, like, dynamically these displays pop up. Because in order for me to show the E2, I have to show the air group, which means I have to show the carrier, which means and the carrier is in a group, so it has to show that, right? Now, if the carrier was just a lone ship out here, then you wouldn't see this. But you would see the carrier here with a line leading from the carrier to here. Now, all these things are movable. I can move these guys around. I can move this around, right? And I can move these around. Now, these strategic air ones do have a little limit. I can't move them outside of their zone. If I go over here, look, it stays right there. So certain of these little displays have a limit of where they can go, but ones like these trays, they can go anywhere, okay? So long story short, I want to use my E2C to be a cap, so I'm going to not assign anything to strategic. Okay. Okay, what are we up to next? Mining. Okay, so if you want to use mines, you can use mines. Okay, there's a configurable amount of since each game essentially only comes with so many markers, like 9 per. So that's essentially what this thing limits to. It says within a particular map, you can only use up to N number of mines in that theater in a game. So you can set that number to whatever you want. Right now, it's currently set to 9. In the save file, okay? So how does it work? Well, it works just like the game. You can go any adjacent hex to the sub that's as long as it's in a coastal or which includes like island hexes and stuff. So a couple of these guys could do that. He can. Let's see. You'll know who can by just going through this list here. So he can, he can, he can, he can. Those are the only two that can. Okay? And I'm not going to set it. So I'm going to skip it. All right, cap. All right, let's assign some cap. Da-da-da. I'm going to assign the two. Well, there's no F-14s on here, so I guess I'm going to assign two F-18s. Woo. All right. All right, so as you can tell, this game handles cap slightly differently. It doesn't use a marker that represents cap, okay? It just adds it to that hex, and it magically moves the cap around if its home base moves around. So as this TF starts moving, you'll just notice that these planes just move along with it, okay? And if these planes move, and if this ship moves into a hex that also has cap for a air base, then they'll all be grouped together, and the game will automatically figure out that all those cap are sitting there, and it keeps track of attacks per cap plane, right? So anyway, it's just a really nice way of keeping track of it without adding a whole other marker with a whole other tray, and it automatically keeps track of all that stuff for you. So. And it keeps knowledge of like knowing that there's an AEW one in this one, so this one has early warning. If you're coming from if I want to assign this guy to cap, then it knows that this guy has AEW support, okay? Because the rules say that if he's coming from an air base, he can go with full points all the way out for hexes and stuff. Anyway, so I think I've set all of the cap that I want there. Going to the Soviets. Honestly, what are the Soviets going to do? Do I want, whatever. I'll just assign I'll assign these guys to be capped for these guys, so that any help they need, whatever. Okay. So, and then let's set this guy to cap both. Yeah, let's set both of them to cap. Okay. And then what? What do you think? Should I set the MiG-23 to cap? Sure, let's do it. All right, that's all the cap. All right, what are we in now? Okay, I already set up all the TFs, so I think we can move past this. But essentially, this is your opportunity prior to actions that you can set up your TFs. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate away from this. I'm probably going to stop just as we get to the orders phase because I think I've gone on pretty long, and I will continue on that afterwards. But I'm going to try to get past this piece first. All right, Soviets, there you go. Yeah, there's nothing I want to do. I want to leave them, those guys. Okay, let's hit it. Oh, high speed. Okay, so this is an option you can do. You can set certain ships to be high speed. I'm going to go ahead and it follows all the rules, right, of what's allowed to go high speed. It follows the rules of if they are high speed, it costs them more to go into a restricted hex. Anyway, it enforces all the rules that you care about. But I'm not going to set anything to high speed. It might make sense to do it high speed for like some of these, the slow convoys and things, but there are no slow convoys. The only convoy I think that's on it is a fast convoy, and he's just as fast as all of his frigates that he's got it. So I'm probably not going to utilize high speed at all, so I'm just going to skip past that. Switches over to the Allies. Do you notice how it's like round robin, or it's ping-ponging, right? So to prevent having so many screens, to have so many screens that popping up, what I try to do is if I go through phases where you're constantly changing sides, I'll try to double tap, right? So if it's Soviet American through one phase, then it'll be American Soviet to the next, then it'll be Soviet American there. So at least it minimizes the amount of pop-ups if you have that pop-up enabled, right? So you get two sets of orders in as you're traversing through the gameplay. All right, we're not going to do that. All right, I'm going to stop here at activation, but this will be fun. So activation, there's a lot of new features on it. You have to set, you can set the actual payload that's on the planes when you launch them. But we'll go ahead and discuss that on our next one, and I'll fix a couple of those little things, tweaks that I wanted to do that I noticed on this last one. So I hope you guys are, I hope this is useful. I hope this is fun for you. Hopefully you'll start using your own. And I did fix a big bug that would have probably crashed some scenarios, but I found it and I squashed it. So the version that's out on there on the site has that bug fixed. It doesn't have these little features I'm talking about now set up, but those are mostly cosmetic things. So anyway, hope you guys have fun, and I'll talk to you guys next time.